Ever since Life is Strange Double Exposure massively disappointed me, I've had my eye on Lost Records Bloom and Rage. The original Life is Strange developer have dug back to their roots, providing us with a game that appears on the surface as a spiritual successor to Dontnod's magnum opus. I was cautious, but I had no reason to be, because Lost Records Bloom and Rage is fantastic. Before we begin, if you do end up enjoying the video, then please consider subscribing as we're looking to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, but enough of that nonsense, let's get started on the premise. So, the premise of the game is you play as Swan, a woman in her 40s, reuniting with her childhood friends in her hometown at a bar. But it's immediately clear that this isn't purely a social meeting. Something happened here 25 years ago. Something they've all blacked out of their minds. Something not good. One of your friends has a package addressed to Bloom and Rage, a band you all formed back in 1995, but you never made it big. So who would know this band 25 years later? Something is inherently wrong here. The bulk of the game is set back in 1995, as you recount the events that took place over the summer. This is where the characterization really shines. Swan is an incredibly shy person. She's a bit of a social outcast. She laughs when her mum suggests bringing a friend to her dad's party. Swan finds solace in her camcorder. She's filming a sort of memoir of Velvet Cove before she and her family move away. She's immediately easy to sympathise with. She suffers with heavily low self-esteem. She just wants to mind her business and bury herself in her memoir. After meeting the rest of the group, she worries that her love for solitude makes her seem distant or unrelatable to her new friends. Despite this, she hopes to capture something truly meaningful with her camcorder, something that proves her perspective on the world actually matters. Things are kicked into action when she's bullied outside of a movie theatre. A misunderstanding leads to the bullies threatening her before one of the bullies' sister, Kat, runs up and defends her, followed soon after by two girls, Autumn and Nora, who also witness the commotion. With the strength of girl power, they make the bullies leave and decide to spend the rest of the day together, and alas, a friendship is born. I was initially skeptical of this group dynamic. There is a lot of the classic Dontnod colloquial language which they're really not very good at, and there's a lot of dialogue that feels very cringy, but I actually feel like it works in the context of this game, and I have no idea if it was intentional. Whether they've done it on purpose or not, the dialogue perfectly illustrates the mid-90s cringe that plagued the world, so I grew to appreciate that aspect over time. Another area where I was skeptical but that I appreciated as time went on was something I usually hate in these type of games, and that's how long it takes to get going. The game is of course releasing in 2 parts, and with this being the first part, I expected it to do a bit more to sink its hooks in early. But instead, it really allows its characters time to breathe. If you were coming into this expecting a lot of action, you would be disappointed. That has clearly been saved for Tape 2. The bulk of this game is spent setting up the dynamics and relationships of its main cast. At first I was becoming frustrated. You spend a lot of time in this game just walking and filming stuff. That's basically all you do for 80% of the runtime. But as time went on and my camcorder storage filled up, I came to the realization that it was working. I began to really care for all 4 of these characters. They're all easy to root for, all with their own backstories and issues. The game spends a lot of time focusing on their dreams, their personalities, and spoon-feeding you everything you need to care about them. For a lot of people, it will feel like a bit much, and there were definitely times where I felt the same. But as the tape was coming to a close, I had the sudden realization that it had done its job. I cared deeply for all of these people. Dontnod probably could have streamlined this process a bit, I'm not denying that, but at the end of the day, the intended effect was achieved. Those quiet, seemingly unimportant moments, they're what make the game feel so real. You get to know Swan and her friends not just through their words, but through their body language, their habits, the way they react to each other. And because the game takes the time to build those relationships, when things do start to get a bit weird, it hurts more. Speaking of these characters, let's talk about them. We've already spoken about Swan, so we'll skip her, get out of here. Autumn is my favourite character. Autumn carries the weight of responsibility as the unofficial leader of the group, fearing that she'll let her friends down when they need her the most. Her greatest hope is that their bond will last beyond the summer, that they won't just be a fleeting moment in each other's lives. Nora hides a deep self-doubt beneath her rebellious exterior, afraid that she's not as fearless as she pretends to be. More than anything, she hopes to break free from expectations and carve out an identity where she can be both strong and vulnerable. Kat is the most enigmatic of the group, but her quiet nature hides a fear that no one truly understands her. She hopes to find a connection deep enough to make her feel seen, something that lasts beyond the music and the late night conversations. I really cannot express enough how much of this game is just watching this group of friends blossom from outsiders who happen to be at the movie theatre at the same time to forging a deep bond. The mysterious stuff really takes a back seat here, with it only really taking the forefront in the final hour of the game's 5-hour runtime. This will be an issue for some people, who would be better served waiting for Tape 2 to release so that they can play the whole thing, but for me, as someone who is enamoured by character-driven narratives and who is a sucker for some juicy character development, I had a great time. Speaking of the mystery, let's get into that. I'm kind of limited as to what I can say here for two reasons. The first is that there really isn't too much of a focus on it in this part, and the second is that I don't really want to spoil what there is, but essentially there's some incredibly weird energy near the girls' hideout. Something is absolutely afoot, and I really do want to learn more. The game uses some really subtle techniques to keep you intrigued in the mystery without giving too much away. My favourite is how, in classic Dontnod fashion, they really utilise the direction of each scene. Even in their bad games, Dontnod have always excelled in direction and environmental storytelling, and that is no different here. When the girls are having fun in the woods, some of the wider camera angles are intentionally human. You sometimes view them from strange angles as though it was from someone else's perspective, and it really gives you the vibe of being watched by something. Combine this with some of the trees having eyes on them, and the vibe is definitely one of they aren't the only things here. The game also leans into a creepy aspect at certain points, such as the Truth or Dare game. Why you'd want to play Truth or Dare in a random cabin in the middle of the woods at night is beyond me, but alas, this is the 90s, nothing made sense. You'll sometimes see a strange purple blur when using your camcorder. It's weird, but it looks really cool. You combine this with the ominous nature of pretty much every conversation you have in the present day sections, and it really does build the suspense. Speaking of the vibes, most of the game isn't creepy, ooh I'm being watched, most of it is actually quite nostalgic. Lost Records absolutely nails the whole small town 90s summer aesthetic. If you're into that mix of nostalgia, mystery and grunge era rebellious energy, then this game gets it so right. First off, the setting, Velvet Cove, it's one of those quiet, slightly eerie small towns where nothing seems to happen until it does. Think of a mix between Arcadia Bay and Twin Peaks. Quaint, but with an undercurrent of something weird. The game does an amazing job of making it feel lived in. You've got areas like the movie theatre and the rundown park, and then you've got hidden trails leading into the woods, places where teenagers can sneak off to do stupid things like playing Truth or Dare in an abandoned cabin in the middle of the night. Again, no idea why they did this. Everything about this game, from the way the characters dress to the cringy colloquialisms, feels authentic without being forced. But the real star of the show is Dontnod. Of course it's the soundtrack. It's packed with that raw, rebellious energy that fits so well with the story. The moment where the song Spark starts playing was brilliant and will stay with me for a while, but what makes it even better is that the characters themselves are in a punk band, Bloom and Rage, and yes, they actually do have their own original songs in the game. Not only does it add to the immersion, but it also plays into the themes of teenage expression and finding your voice. One of the coolest ways Lost Records builds its atmosphere is through Swan's camcorder. Since she's the quiet, observant type, she records everything, and as the player, you actually get to film moments yourself. That means the memories you capture are actually memories you are capturing, and the way you document the world might even affect how things play out later on. One thing I didn't realise, and that I found cool but wish I'd known about prior, is that the footage you record is actually used. There's a section when you're out recording a music video, but then when you get home and view it, it actually uses the footage that you recorded yourself. I wish I'd known about this beforehand though, as I spent the majority of this section searching for collectibles, so the majority of my footage was random birds and rabbit droppings, which doesn't really fit the vibe they were going for. This mechanic is such a smart way to immerse you in the game's world though. Instead of just watching the story unfold, you're actively preserving it, like a real teenager in the 90s would, back when there were no smartphones or social media, just clunky cameras and VHS tapes. One of my favourite things about this game is how it lets you just exist in its world. It's not all about pushing the story forward 24/7, you get to hang out with your friends. There's a lot of those deep late night conversations that feel so much bigger when you're 16. But let's talk about the gameplay. If you've played a Dontnod game before, which you probably have, you know near enough what to expect. It's not action packed, you walk around, you explore the world, you talk to characters and you make choices. Pretty standard stuff. But how Lost Records differentiates itself is the camcorder mechanic, and honestly, I really liked it. Swan carries her camcorder everywhere. She's the quiet one, so instead of always speaking, she'll just record. You control what gets recorded, which means you can film big emotional moments, weird little details, or just random clips if you want to. At first, it feels like just a bit of a gimmick, something that helps immerse you in the 90s setting, but as the game goes on, you start to wonder that maybe what you choose to film actually matters. And because Lost Records jumps between two timelines, I would like to assume that some of these old tapes are going to resurface in tape 2. And here's the best part, there's no checklist, no objective marker telling you exactly what you need to record. You just have to pay attention to what's going on around you and decide for yourself what needs to be recorded. That freedom makes it feel way more personal, like you're actually capturing memories rather than just completing a task to move the game forward. But we do need to talk about something I didn't quite like. If you're coming into this expecting big, game-changing choices, then you will be disappointed. Dontnod is famous for these butterfly effect decisions in games, but Lost Records doesn't seem to go as deep with that. This could be way off base, as we don't have the full game yet, but I don't recall having to make a single major decision in part 1. You make smaller decisions that might change some dialogue and how a scene plays out, or which character does your makeup later, but it's not as though the tape ends with a big decision. The game plays out exactly how it wants to play out, regardless of your input. Yes, you do get dialogue options, and yes, some choices can affect your relationships with the other characters, but so far, Tape 1 doesn't have anything that feels like a massive turning point. No choose who lives or dies, choose anything really. No major branching paths, at least not yet. That said, it is possible that Tape 2 will expand on this. Maybe all the small choices will add up to something bigger in the second half, and honestly, the storytelling is so good that I didn't mind the lack of big choices. The relationships, the stories, the vibes, that's what pulls you in, more than the idea of multiple endings does. I have enough admiration and respect for Dontnod to give them the benefit of the doubt, but if Tape 2 doesn't improve on this aspect, I will be disappointed, but I do care enough about the characters that I imagine I'll still be somewhat satisfied either way. I want to see how this story ends. If you're the kind of player who loves to soak in the details, experience some classic Dontnod environmental storytelling, and enjoy capturing little moments and feeling like you're part of the world, then you're gonna love this game. This game is more about what you remember and what you choose to hold onto. I had a lot riding on Lost Records. Deck 9 drastically let us down with double exposure, and I needed Dontnod to pick up the slack here. So far, they've given me enough to remain interested in the second half of this story. It's the kind of story that gets a little bit under your skin, not just because of the mystery, but because of the moments in between. The friendships, the late night talks, the way a single summer can shape the rest of your life. This game isn't about what happened, it's about the way we remember things, the things we hold onto, and the things we try to forget. And with Tape 2 still on the way, I have a feeling we may not be ready for the truth. So if you were thinking about playing Lost Records, if it sounds like something you like, pick it up, hit record, and pay attention, because some memories don't fade. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope that you did enjoy it. If you did, then please make sure to subscribe. Remember, we're trying to get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. If you like the video, click like. I upload at least one video a week, but for now, that is all. Have a nice day, and goodbye.